Welcome to the Loading Screen. This is a show where we talk about the best League of Legends region in the world, the LPL. With me are two very familiar faces. We have LPL casters, Clement and Raz. How are you gentlemen doing, and are you ready to talk about some LPL?
Oh man, we're always ready about that.
Ready.
Yeah.
That's not even a question. It's nice to be here. It's nice to be here. It's been a fun year going.
It's nice having you two. So I want to start off with 2018. Let's end the year off with a recap of your favorite moments at Worlds.
Ooh. All right, I'm gonna go first. My favorite moment was the Shy going into 4 G2 members with Aatrox and basically turning the entire team fight himself. There was never a better encapsulation of pure mechanical dominance and sheer individual will. Like, all his team members were running away from him. Ning was dead already, and he was like, no, this series ends here. And he just went in 4v1. That was my favorite moment.
I'm just gonna like piggyback off that. Obviously, I have my own.
Okay.
But like the funniest thing is like throughout an entire year we talk about communication. You know, you gotta have the communication in your team fight. You want to have a successful team environment. The communication has to be on point. And then you literally get the comms afterwards, where the guy just literally goes for it because
He doesn't say anything.
Yeah, I'm not saying anything.
The team's like, hey, we better back out.
Skill trumps all. So like my thing is going to be less specific, I suppose, because it was just more of a feeling of when I was watching Invictus Gaming versus KT. Because I thought that was like lost to begin. Remember, our expectations was not only is RNG going to take down G2 with the greatest of ease, but also Invictus Gaming versus KT should not even be really be a question. Sure, that's going to be the most challenging for a lot of the matchups, but without a doubt, we had KT. I had KT taking the tournament, and so
Traitor.
oh come on! But then immediately, not only were they going to get 3-0'd, just like that. Sure, they draw it back with Smeb coming out with like great performances, but that was just like adrenaline for a lot of people. I was on Twitter, you know, I was back home. I was leading the most uninteresting life, just clacking away on my keyboard. But my God, my keyboard was taking some abuse because I was so damn excited. And that was like, for me, that was the greatest moment Worlds can really give for me. Not only that, but also just Western teams during group stages. So I just cheated.
You had two things.
I did two things, but I take them. So like, not only was it Invictus Gaming versus KT, but also just like the entire group stage of just the Western teams all just going for it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to top it off with Rookie standing on the world stage, holding that trophy, tears in his eyes, and even translating in Chinese for the LPL fans himself. And I just feel like this is a perfect representation of this year. LPL, Rookie being one of the exports that came from Korea in 2014, IG, an organization that was rebuilt around him, and finally being in Faker's shadow on the world stage.
That's why it's so easy to make it about himself in terms of like, for him to be on that stage, the spotlight's on him. If it was on me, I'd be selfish. I'd be like, yes, I deserve this. It's like the entire blood, sweat, and tears, and it's finally like I actually get something out of this after like such a long career. But Rookie is the type of person to not make it about himself. Like when he translated to the Chinese audience, remember, he was in front of his Korean fans. He's back home, and he still was able to bring the Chinese fans back home for him. And then on top of that, like, you look at all the comms that we had for Invictus Gaming, and he was always like bringing in the other players, the Chinese rookies up. So like for him, he always tries to like put other people on a podium instead of himself. So when it's finally about him, he still does it at the end by like, of course, translating and kind of like thanking his Chinese fans. So for Rookie, it was an incredible year to cap off a career. Obviously, he's still rolling on. He's still going to look to take 2019, but he finally gets something back.
Yeah, and that's the interesting you mentioned right there, Benson. At the end of that, come out of the shadow of Faker.
Yeah.
I don't really think he has, because until he actually meets Faker, SKT, and beats him at Worlds, I still think a lot of people are going to have that lingering question. Is he really the best mid laner?
Why you got to do that?
I'm just saying the stage. That's what the narrative is going to be.
Stop it!
That's not what my narrative. I know he's the best, but
the book is closed, man. 2018, does Faker get out of here?
All right.
That is literally chapter 20.
Okay.
Chapter 12, perhaps, because December. But like, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, look,
that's the next goal for Rookie.
2019, 100%, because we're going to be talking about how Faker has been set up to succeed this time around. It's no longer, hey, you know what, Rookie's been in the shadows of it.
Is that Fookie? Is that good?
It's possible. Let's come back to it. But like 100%, like Faker versus Rookie is going to be really something to look for in 2019.
We need to see that.
For 2018,
the world needs to see that.
For 2018, Rookie can just actually just settle back in his chair, and that's what I like about it.
Yeah.
So that's a perfect way to say it. Let's close the book on 2018. Let's look forward, just like when I'm about to press that queue up button after 10 straight losses.
Stop it. Don't do it.
Let's talk about something new going into the future. Let's talk about the new RNG. Let's talk about Let Me and MLXG taking to the sidelines. And so they're going to start with Amazing J and Karsa, and coaching this team will be Dandy, first-time coach, and Green Tea. What do you think about this team? Is this a step up or down?
I'm going to come out and go with the opinion that's probably a step down. Every time you take a successful team, a well-oiled machine, arguably the best team of 2018 up until Worlds, and you take 4 roster changes, pretty big roster changes by the way, onto the team, I think that's a huge hit. For sure, Spring Split, they're going to lose a lot of their momentum, and I think they're actually going to have to restructure their team a little bit. This is probably what they're looking to do anyway by bringing Amazing J in, but honestly, I feel like it's a step down. They're not going to have that explosive X factor for tournaments. Remember, MLXG, he was reading the enemy jungle path from the sidelines during those tournaments. That's why they brought him in on those Game 5s for that extra push. And for Let Me, I honestly felt like he was one of the best top laners in the LPL in the summer part of the season. He was better than Amazing J for me, 100%. It was actually a very solid laner on that end. And bringing Amazing J, that's just, I'm not sure. I know he has his good parts, as like, he started out as a fighter and all of that, but I just don't think he's seen the same success that Lemmy has.
You know what's funny about that? Even though obviously Amazing J hasn't had like the most successful year with BLG, but like, guess who was topping the damage soaking charts in all of the statistics?
All you need to do is play a tank.
That's what he was doing. Gladby was doing the same thing, and what happened to him? But like my take on it is, I would disagree completely in the sense that I think that they're going to be better off. We're talking about like year long. Initially, Spring Split can be a little bit of a I agree with like the whole Let Me synergy vibe.
Yeah.
Let Me obviously understood the team to a T, and he could play to that very well. I think that it's going to be a little bit of difficulties bringing on anybody to that kind of a roster. But I think Amazing J fits that style to a T. He's been known, now the Western audience may not know the idea of it, but he's been known as a streaker in the Chinese audience eyes because like he plays Singed, Mundo, and he runs into the enemy team. This was like last year. So his identity a lot of the times has just been a tank engage stat.
Yeah.
Now Camille was his great carry, but it was a carry that can engage. His teleports has always just been on point. So for me, I feel like this has been what RNG's been about. Bring your top laner to the bottom side of the map. And so that makes sense to bring on Amazing J. For Karsa versus MLXG, 2018 was about like how flexible RNG could be. And though I would love for Karsa to just run 100% of the game, even though I felt like MLXG was great to bring him on to a back half of a best of 5, or maybe beginning of it, depends on the matchup. I like that idea, but for a regular season, I always favor having a consistent jungle to be able to communicate and kind of give the same feel to his laners. And Karsa has always been like top 3 jungler. For me, he was like the best jungler in Spring Split, or at least actually I had him as the best jungler in Summer Split. And I always felt like he was always the best world-class consistent jungler you can bring on, the most methodical person you can bring on the lineup. Play him 100% of the time. I like it in terms of being able to give RNG a sense of consistency. So by Summer Split, they should 100% be able to round it out and be top 2. I mean, they were already having the battles versus Invictus Gaming, and they were still able to beat them in the best of 5 in finals, Summer Split, and then Spring Split in the semifinals, while having essentially our entire regular season of just role swapping. So I think they're better off for this. The only question is Dandy, who hasn't had a coaching gig yet. So this is his first time as a coach. But I think he's been given a very easy job of, hey, welcome to the team. This is already our identity. It's like, there's nothing you're going to be changing here per se. So I think for him, he's already been set up to succeed.
So we're a little split on this right now, and I think this is a really high risk and high reward for RNG. Seeing as they're taking a bit of flack right now from the audience, so if they do kind of fail in that beginning, I think it's gonna be some negative effects for the team. Team's mentality in China.
No, RNG's gonna be fine. They've never actually finished like top in terms of regular split, so they're gonna be okay living with that for a while.
That was a funny thing during the summer split where they were like, are they even going to be making third or fourth? They were so like Eastern Conference was very competitive at the time, and RNG because they were not running Uzi like from the beginning, and when they brought him up, there was not an 80 carry oriented meta. You're playing mages, and he said no.
I'm just gonna sit the split off. Yeah, it's like, just sign me up with Reckless on the bench.
So like, that's the thing about RNG is that the regular season they do tend to phone it in, and they have great players who can come in like Abel. So like that wasn't necessarily an issue, but like I still feel like they're going to be able to take that spot. So that's a hill I'm dying on.
All right, so let's talk about definite upgrade. Let's talk about Suning. For those of you that don't know, Suning is a huge online retailer. As an organization, this year they've signed Maple, they've signed Sword Art from the Flash Wolves. They've signed SMLZ from the Rogue Warriors, and along with Xiao Ao and Hacker, they have three ways of carrying the game through 3 lanes. So my question to you is, are they going to be the top 3 for you?
Ooh, top 3.
So I'm going to start this off by saying that's the baseline.
Oh, okay.
Like, because if we're talking about like world class for Sword Art, the only people who've ever like threw questions at Sword Art was the fact that he came from the LMS and that there's no, we have no eyes on you during the entire regular season. Like we don't know how successful you can be there, but there's always reaching first place there. It's never been a question. Goes to world stages, and he's always been a great leader, a great playmaker for the team. So 100% best support in the world comes into the lineup with the best, or at least the second best AD carry consistently during a regular season performance. You should have the best bottom lane that's not named Uzi and Ming. That's not a question. Bring in a world-class mid laner of Maple, and you already mentioned, Benson, like the fact that they have Hacker and Xiao Ao, second best top laner next to the Shy, and for Hacker, who's always been fighting for, I'd say 3rd, 4th place jungler. I would have had on my 3rd place in terms of jungle, the all LPL jungle tier list that came at the end. He would have been number 3 for me next to Ning and Karsa. I thought that's how well he played during the regular season.
I agree.
So for this team, if you have that much talent, you have Coach Sim, there is literally nothing, no excuses at all for you to be lower than 3rd place for me. So like that's basically what they're trying for, and they're trying to go for RNG that's had pretty bad regular season performances to their name that I think that they can actually try and overtake. I still have them in 3rd place. I'm not going to be that much of a gambler and take them over RNG. But I think that if they go below that, if they go 4th, 5th, then that's going to be a failure on their part.
I want to touch on SMLZ a little bit. I mean, he's the best ADC that you've never heard of internationally for Western fans. So this is really going to be a chance for him to show off. Along with Sword Art, who excels in initiating and allowing him to make all these plays that Western fans never get to see.
That's the thing. SMLZ has never played alongside a top tier support in his career so far in the LPL, and I think that's the reason he jumped ship from Rogue Warriors to join this Flash Wolves duo basically on the new Suning team. So in terms of pure roster, I agree that this is going to be like a number 3 super team in terms of just talent, but I'm not going to give them their 3rd spot just yet. And that's because TOP is on the horizon, and I'm going to put my vote with TOP over there. Bottom line, however, is I think that Suning Gaming are going to replace EDG in the standings. And this is my predictions, but 2019 is going to be the first year that we're not going to see EDG represent the LPL at Worlds.
Feels bad. I mean, it does because should have been 2018 in terms of like JD had such a big run, but this time around there's just so much competition in the midst of things. We haven't even talked about JD. I know we'll talk about him soon enough. To the point of Suning, that I felt like to your point about SMLZ, because I want to like dig into that one a little bit more. That Suning, SMLZ as a player, you're right. Never had that same kind of a caliber support. He's been right beside him. Love CD, not a good support that he's had when he was on M3. You look towards, I'd say the best support he's had was 5 in OMG.
Agreed.
And with that, he was able to go to an international event, which is Rift Rivals. But he's never been on a world stage. I would call him, he's the best player to not go to Worlds. There's always been that one player that in the world we always look towards, but they always get their shot. He hasn't just yet. And the fact that he's been able to play so consistently during a regular season, but never be able to get to that point, sure, there's always like some drama near the end of split. In OMG, there was a little bit of drama on his end. So for him, this is his year to kind of shut all that up. And I think he has to do it this year. think he will. I think third place is basically that baseline that he has to achieve. We already saw like a little bit of a snippet of what's going to look like Demacia Cup.
Yeah, well, definitely. And from your point, we saw obviously, Top Sports TOP.
Yeah.
They were looking really good at the Demacia Cup. For me personally, it was a joy to watch them. They actually took out IG, sent them to the losers brackets initially. Yeah. So what do we have to look forward to on this team? What are their strengths and weaknesses?
All right, so the big storyline about TOP is that they acquired Knight. Knight has been the perennial top 3 talent in the Korean Challenger ladder. I believe he was ranked number 1 the longest period of time, over Tarzan, over Faker at that position. So he's obviously the big up-and-coming talent. And what we saw during the Demacia Cup was that even when Rookie got the counter pick, Knight still solo killed him in lane. That's completely unheard of. We've never seen that, and that's a big reason why they were actually able to knock IG out of the winners bracket, was because their jungler and mid lane duo of Knight and XX can take on anyone in the league right now. They have a fair chance, or even a higher chance, of coming out ahead in that matchup. Now, their other lanes, 369. Not really a known player, had some good showings, and their bottom lane between Loken and Ben, that's not really known as a super aggressive early game laning setup, but because of their mid and jungle synergy, I kind of feel like they have a shot against pretty much anyone. You're talking about RNG and then Suning Gaming, who are the 2 big competitors right there, and honestly, I would give the favor to XX and Knight over Xiaohu and Karsa, and even over Maple and Hacker.
Yeah, so my thing with TOP, because I actually rated them fairly low in my own tier list. I had them in 6th place because, like, the way I viewed it was, they have some incredible talent. It's never a question when it comes to talent. For me, it's always a question of when you have shored your lineup for an entire year, let's say split in half, because now we're looking like far ahead. Do you have closers on your lineup? Do you have somebody that has that veteranship name? Now, Ben is the closest person that you have for that. Somebody who's been on that team for WE. But then my issue has always been is that enough for your team to have that kind of a namesake? Now in Demacia Cup, they shut me up. Like they
made it to the finals.
Yes, and they were able to do that with definitive games. Yeah. There was never a question of, oh man, this mid game is going on for a little bit too long, that we had on Suning last 2018 and 2017.
And in Demacia Cup as well. To be honest.
So like those are some questions that I had initially, but I felt like they had completely threw them in the wayside. I think 369 is another talent that I was like, he's a great rookie when he was on KOF and LDL, but can he bring that on the major stage? Yes. But remember, this is when we got to push people back a little bit. Motivation is always a big question when it comes to a Demacia Cup. How much time you have to practice is another big question in the Demacia Cup. TOP was the first team to get into a practice booth. The first team to actually say, hey, this is our roster. The Chinese fans, the audience, to say we've already signed these players, that we were the fastest to get them. We were the fastest to put them in the gaming house and actually start running them scrims. We're seeing them on Weibo, those pictures that we're rolling out. Well, teams like Suning, it's like, well, we didn't have that same time. We didn't get it all together yet. So like for Demacia Cup, that's excellent. And I would say another example would be like IG that just got that championship. They did have some time off, but they're not necessarily coming into this tournament trying to prove something to their fans. While other teams are making a major stake of saying this is what we're proving to people that we can actually make it.
Shy wasn't there. Ning was in fever patches, stuff like that.
Yeah. So like those are the questions that you'd have to ask yourself. But like if we're talking about, is this a good point to make a reference to for TOP? Then hell yes it is. Okay. I don't think they're 6th place anymore. I'd say maybe they're fighting for 5th, going for JD. Like I think it's going to be TOP versus JD, which is a very fun thing to say because obviously there's fun matchups within that. But I think that TOP proved to me that they are a good closing team.
They're definitely a team that everyone should keep an eye on. I mean, XX said in an interview that they were scrimming against IG. Yeah. And it was back and forth as well. So if IG deems them as a worthy opponent, then they're definitely a team that we should really look to in the next season.
I just want to throw it out there, but my year-end list for LPL right now is going to be IG, RNG, TOP, Suning. Sorry, no gaming anymore. Suning.
They don't game no more.
Yep. They just ball. And 5th place for me, probably still EDG. So those are going to be my top 5 in that order. Okay. Do you agree?
So IG RNG is no question. Like, now I have Suning as 3rd, so you already know that. Oh, well, we'll shake hands on that. We're fine. And then I have, I'll say for 4th place, I'm still gonna have
Third place.
No, I have Suning as third.
Oh, you have Suning.
I have
Okay,
Suning as third. 4th place is gonna still be JD for me.
Oh, okay.
That one's gonna be tough.
Oh.
That one's gonna be tough.
But we can talk about the team later.
We'll talk about it later. We'll talk about reasonings for that one later. But I have JD as 4th. I have 5th for TOP. Then we all know that EDG is gonna be 6th.
TOP ain't EDG not gonna be in the regional qualifiers.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard.
We'll expand on that. We'll expand on that a little bit later. All right, no spoilers yet, even though you guys pretty much just spoiled it.
Sorry.
So when we're talking about Knight, he's a player that they lost to IG in the end of the Demacia Cup, so he takes it out. He takes it out exactly with his left hand on his on the mouse. I can't even open doors with my left hand, so so he takes it out on the Korean solo ladder once again, making it to the top, #1. Like Tarzan hates this guy unless he's on his team. But talking about Knight, we must also talk about his Sasuke counterpart. We must talk about Yagao on JD Gaming, of course. Now they have acquired Levi and Flawless. Levi coming from 100 Thieves and Flawless coming from Rogue Warriors. Basically, I mean, they're the same person, right?
Just about.
If you don't look at their IDs and name, they're pretty much the same person. So what are they trying to achieve with this roster? Is this gonna work for them at all?
I think JD's goal coming into this split was trying to keep more less the same, because they had a very successful formula at Summer Split. Now they didn't get to go to Worlds because remember Summer was when they really came up. They brought in Coach Ohm. That's when they were like a top tier team that was battling up against RNG in regular season. They had a pretty good shot to take down IG when it came down to the playoff set too. That was really close. A game 5 could have meant a lot there, but they got basically the telltale for them was that we need to be online earlier. Like spring splits when we need to get things together. So like for off season, don't change too much. Now, not much, like they didn't have much power about the AD carry changes. Like Loken left. It's like Clid went to Faker on SKT. So you need to just replace them with someone similar, if not better. And I felt like with the jungle positions, I think that's a good move. You bring in Flawless, same style, basically same carry potential, if not more stability if you're comparing him to Clid. And then you also bring on Levi to maybe challenge that. My only question is, who's going to be the leading man? I already said that, perhaps it's going to be Flawless. We saw him in Demacia Cup, but we didn't get to see Levi. Maybe you didn't get to travel to the gaming house too early. I felt like only really RNG made use of their jungle, like their 2 jungle system very well. I think it's always going to be a question of how to make use of that, because Flawless, he was in that same experience when he was on BLG. He was on BLG, and they really didn't make use of him there in a 2 jungle style system. So that's my only real question, is based off of synergy with Yagao. Push up Yagao and make him look good, because really, the 2v2 is what's going to be incredibly important for this team.
I think bottom line is that they're looking for something that's quite similar to Clid, who's very strong mechanically and can play towards the top side, because JD Gaming, their bread and butter, in the early game at least, is their 2 solo lanes. Yagao and Zoom are definitely top 3 in their positions for those solo lanes, so they just want a strong mechanical jungler that can link those 2 up and scrap heavily, and they're a very frontline focused team. That's what they want to do.
They kept Yagao, kept Ohm, Coach Ohm, that was great. Kept Zoom, kept Lumao. Like, these are the players you wanted to still stay on the lineup if you wanted to see them successful. So, like, that's legitimately what they did. And there are rumors that perhaps they bring in Imp, too. Because, like, the only question now is AD carry. Because I'm not too high on bringing in Void. So I think that if they can shore that up before spring split, then they are definitely going to be, like, the same caliber of team that we saw them last year.
Yeah. So it's still questionable right now whether Imp is gonna be on JD. We'll see. We'll have to see about that.
Yes.
But talking about questionable decisions, let's talk about BLG, Bilibili Gaming, and signing on Kuro from Africa Freaks.
All right.
Why?
So, like, I'm a fan of Kuro. I think Kuro during the LCK regular season consistently is pushed for MVP. I think that, like, if we're talking about, like, the best mid laners in Korea, it's not named Faker, you would immediately go to BDD, but I'll also go towards Kuro. I think that this is a great push for BLG if they wanted to restructure their lineup to bring in Kuro. I think the major question is more so in style. Like, stylistically, he's a slower player. He's more of a mage type. I know he has a Yasuo in there, But for the most part, you're going to be playing a slower play style, and he's going to realize that he's going to have to change the way he plays when he comes into the LPL. I think that's the biggest change for him. But if you want to build a team around Kuro, I think that's a good way to go for it. I think it's a good idea.
Okay, I'm going to have a really different take on that. Okay, I feel like Kuro's much more of a tech player in terms of the international stage. I know he has a good showing in his own domestic league, but internationally, you don't really expect him to outmuscle people with his athleticism or his raw talent. He's basically brings in something new and tries to win through the counter pick. So just based off that, I'm not sure he's going to be your centerpiece player, but in the grand scheme of things, we have to remember BLG lost Amazing J, they lost Road, they're in a completely new rebuilding phase.
Yep.
So I think Kuro, while he could be a good piece and a good kind of counter to certain teams, I don't think he's going to be your centerpiece. That's what BLG's lacks.
He answers a lot of questions that BLG were asking. Is he better than Mole? And he better than Athena? Yes.
Better than Athena. Better than Athena.
Better than Mole. The fact that we even have a conversation about Mole versus Kuro, I don't want to have that. Like, he is better than Mole.
But in the long term, like, Kuro's, how many years has Kuro been around? He's been around for a while, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has been a long time.
Yeah.
And he's changed his name from the time that he was on, alongside Smeb and all that. And he was known as more of like, take a step back and be a facilitator to being a straight out carry. So like for him, he can be that carry. He is a carry when he was in the LCK in the latter portions of the split. And I think that if for questions like, is he better than those two mid laners? I would say emphatically yes. Is he, will this change roster better the team? Like for instance, BLG in the summer split, not going to make playoffs. They didn't make playoffs. They looked awful as a team. They didn't have an identity at the time. Their identity technically was like play through Amazing J and try and team fight. Didn't work for them, did it? So I think that if this changes them for the better, if they have a higher placement, of course it's a better decision for them. I think they can fight to be a playoff team.
I agree with you. Mid lane options, definitely upgrade.
Yeah.
I just don't know if BLG as a team is going to go up because there's just way too many pieces that are up in the air right now.
Yeah, we'll have to see where they line up. I think we'll have to see what conference they get drawn in. Like a lot of the questions still has to if the luck of the draw works in their favor.
They're basically working with completely new people right now. Kine, MNI from the LPL leagues, and of course they have ADD coming over. Trying to fit all of those pieces into a new team. So basically rebuilding team, for me, bottom line, wait and see.
Big question mark for all of us, I think. So I have a funny story about Kuro actually. He's a really him and Nofe have a really good relationship from their time at Rocks. Nofe the coach, and they're really close. So as you know, Nofe was on EDG, which is right beside BLG, their gaming houses. So he got really hyped. He gets to see him every day, talk to his previous coach, and then of course we get the announcement that Nofe is gonna go to Africa Freaks.
Can I just say LCK wins this trade? You can say whatever you want about Nofe, but he has a proven record of success with EDG. Like he's just made it work year in after year, and I don't think the LPL is getting equal success back.
I mean, we'll see with that. I think Kuro for the long term will work out, but he's much like any Korean player that comes into the team, like a team in China. Initially, the first split's going to be a learning curve for him and his squad. Because remember, for BLG, just like a small tidbit, bringing in a young jungler like Meteor as well. Like that kind of a synergy between him and his jungler, him and his bottom lane. That's something he'll have to learn. But then, I guess congratulations to go to Africa Freaks is the big thing for Nofe. He's always had, good teams that he's been on, and he's always been able to push successfully.
Well, he's left EDG, and guess who's filling that role now?
Okay, who is
RNG Heart.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. The next biggest announcement, I think, in terms of coaching staff, EDG for me has been always a team that's been quite one-dimensional, I guess you can say. My question is, will Hart be able to elevate this team? Will he be able to kind of break the limits that this team has? They've been to Worlds a bunch of times, never making it past the quarterfinals. Is Hart the key?
I think Hart's a good direction. It's a good step in the right direction because for Hart, he's been on teams that really, their initial worry's always been what direction are we going for? Initially it was LGD, and I think that the steps in that split was correct. And then he comes onto RNG, and what happens is he puts them in the right direction as well. And they've had identities that they can rely on. A lot of times you can still allot those, attribute that to, let's say, having Uzi. So of course you're going to be playing towards the bottom side of the map. But for him, he always had you can always see a footprint that Hart has put on that team. So I think that's something that EDG desperately needs this time around. Because for EDG, my questions, and we've already talked about how where we place in EDG, that they're in dire need of direction, where they can go two ways. They have a great carry top laner in Ray, but do you want to play them in a carry position if their bottom lane is going to be so focused on just consistently fighting? So if that's going to be a major concern for him, is that now you have a rookie jungler. You didn't have that in your previous team. You're going to have to be coaching and guiding your jungler a little bit more frequently. You have a top laner that needs to know what his place is on this team. He needs to answer those questions for them fairly reliably, and I think that he can do that. I still have some doubts because that comes down to faith, and I'm not a man of faith. So in that direction, I kind of say I don't think so, but I think that's a good call for them.
Yeah. I think EDG, they have the correct talent pieces to actually play different styles, but they've lost their competitive edge that they held on before.
Yeah.
In the past, EDG had 3 out of 5 of the best positions in the LPL. They had the best macro game so far. And in 2018, the reason they fell off is that's just no longer the case. People have caught up to them macroly. They just can't just hide in a bush around Baron and hope people are going to walk in. That's their bread and butter play. And their bot lane just isn't winning most of the time now. You have guys like JackeyLove, you have guys like Uzi, SMLZ, and even now we saw that they were losing to Suning's bot lane quite heavily. So bottom line is EDG's old style is not going to work. And Hart has to change this team to a different win condition. And I think that win condition, for me, I think they're going to have to focus on the team fights. They have to play the 5v fights. The rest of the LPL does it. You can't skip out on that part.
This is the first time that EDG's ever been challenged, because remember, for me, this is the change in landscape. Franchise does some beautiful things, and for it just puts it so there are a lot of new faces that do what EDG used to do, like in season 3, or season 4, where EDG used to be the team with the best coaching staff.
Yeah,
you're right about the best
jungler,
players, the best jungler, best bottom lane. They had that no matter what. If things were a question, where it's like, hey, you know what, we can't do it with Name anymore in an international stage. Well, then okay, we're changing that. Deft. What the heck? It's like they can emphatically answer those questions based off of any worries, because they were the best team with perhaps the deepest pockets. And I felt like that's changed completely. We have Suning, TOP, big names, big brands that are backing these organizations. So now EDG have to be in a landscape where they're not that anymore, where they have to say, okay, well, we have to be a smarter team with how we practice. And I feel like bringing in Hart is the right direction once again, because if they're a team that says we'll need to practice the right way, he can do that for them.
Well, exactly, and we saw this at the Masia Cup when EDG obviously took out RNG.
Yeah.
So I feel like they're definitely going in the right direction. I feel like we can look forward to watching EDG and how they will evolve over time. I want to talk about LGD for a second here. Kramer and Ian being on this team, I mean, they've kind of been, I don't want to say bottom, but we'll say mid tier team. Are they going to be able to make playoffs this time with the addition of these two players?
You go for it first.
All right, I don't really think so. In my read, I actually feel like this is a downgrade for LGD. So they lost Y4 and they lost Jinu. I would say in terms of raw talent, their best player is still Yuki, so they kept on to that. But in terms of their laning strength, I see that dropping quite significantly right now. Like Y4 was definitely, I would say, top 5 AD carry last split. He had a very solid performance, and he had a few highs as well. Jinu was less certain around the time. We call him Budget the Shy. Like, he'll beat anyone from like 10th to 14th rank, but lose to everyone above him. So that might be a little bit more up for grabs. But overall, I feel like this is kind of a downgrade for the team, and they're going to be looking to integrate once again 2 new career players onto the roster, which LGD has not had a successful record of doing.
So just for people who don't know what the roster currently is like, because now they've brought in Lies, as you already mentioned, they have Condi as their jungler, Yuki, Ian, the bottom lane Kramer, and PYL still. So like, if we're just talking about what did the offseason do for them, for me, I don't know. Because like Ian and Yuki, like sure they brought in Ian, but when is he going to see play? Because technically, yeah, you have the Chinese, like you have like just the 2 Korean players, so you can still play them. That's fine. But Yuki has been a ridiculously good mid laner. Like by far, he's been that mid laner. Is like there is no reason for you to ever sub him out. So and then you say, well, what's my faith that LGD will actually keep Yuki on consistently or for the right reasons? Because like they've been a team that actually just swaps people in almost randomly. So I think that this is a really weird decision to bring in Ian when they already know that Yuki should be a player that you should be, give him the Supermax contract, like just going all in for him. You should just like try and base your team around him completely. Because I think Condi was a good decision. If you're going to have Condi and Yuki, that's a good 2v2 you can just build around, right? You don't have to ask too many questions about Lies. Lies is going to pick Darius or Nara or whatever. He's going to do his thing in the top lane. That should be an okay way to play. And I think for the most part, their team they're not going to be good enough for playoffs. But I think they can be if they have the right coaching staff. They're going to invest 100% in their coaching staff and then say, well, we're going to put so much into our young talent mid lane and Yuki, and then try and work with PY a little bit so he can have like a more control in the lineup, because I think he's been lacking control in his teams thus far, especially in 2018. So like that's where they can move, where the most important thing for LGD are the things that you don't see behind the scenes in practice. But like while you can see EDG's been, recognizing that with the heart pickup, I don't see what the hell happened with LGD. Like, I think
they lost their players because of budget. That's what it seems like.
Yes,
yeah.
And they kept UDJ. I think that's good. So like that's a really good one to that point actually, because you got to see a little bit more of an identity and improvements with UDJ. I think we'll see improvements, but not enough for playoffs.
So gentlemen, I'm hearing your analysis, but all I'm hearing is LPL punching bag. LGD.
What? No.
Oh, LGD, yeah, maybe. They'll be LGD punching. Yeah, we're good for that. No, if we're talking about LPL punching bag, RNG and IG are still the best bet. You can just, or a Suning, put those chips forward.
No, he's saying that LGD is going to be the punching bag of the LPL.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're just going to be like dumpster fire once again. But
yeah, I had them as 15th out of 16.
15th out of 16.
Well, we don't know for sure actually. So because there's going to be 2 new teams this year.
I know.
Into 2019.
Yeah.
We have SDG that's coming from the LDL.
Yeah.
And also Victory 5, a team that, a brand new team actually.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I don't have a good gauge on what we'll see about Victory 5, but SDG, they didn't look too shabby.
Yeah, I think Sino Dragon, I've been selling this team. They had a perfect regular season in the LDL. Take that for what it is. Their playoffs, they've had, they got knocked into the loser bracket for a lot of people that will not be able to see that. But for a team, they understand what their identity is for the most part. They know what they're playing towards. And I think Chang Hong is going to be, vying for Rookie of the Split next year. For 2019. So, he is such a great player, and he can play carries. In Demacia Cup, he could showcase the Akali. I didn't think he'd play Akali. I was like, you know what? Play your Scions, play the Camille's, but he was able to play a squishy top lane mage and give them this team the flexibility. They're a great team fighting team. I think they'll be mid-pack, 9th place around there. They'll be fighting alongside BLG. I think a lot of people are not really selling the team well because obviously, LDL team coming up. And they're not going to be a Griffin. They're not going to be the next best thing. Yeah. They're not going to be the worst thing. I think they have a really good idea of who they are, and they were able to keep the same 5 players.
Exactly, and that's a key point to keeping the synergy in the team. So Clement, what about Victory 5? Do you have any
Well, I'm actually really interested in this roster because we were talking about LGD, and they were the ones that actually just basically outbid LGD in 2 of their positions. They had Y4 on their roster right now. They have Jinnu, and I believe they picked up Korn for the mid lane as well. So these are actually proven players in terms of talent-wise that they're definitely in the upper echelon right now with those 3 players that can compete with people. And it's just about how you actually bring all of this package together and round them out with good supporting players. Talent-wise, I think they're already kind of middle of the pack, and I do expect them to take over LGD's spot.
Yeah, I mean, we know that they're a new organization, so I mean, they just need to get their name out there for now, competing for the top spots. Maybe we can save that for later. We know they have deep pockets as well. So, I want to talk about the Demacia Cup that just ended. Were you surprised that IG won?
Not really. I think we expected that, to be
Completely
honest.
expected.
Yeah.
Completely expected. I think that, remember with the Demacia Cup, there's only been 3 teams that have really just won the championship outright. Invictus Gaming won the first ever Demacia Cup, and then it's just been a battle between EDG and RNG. So I was for me, I was looking at it as a spectator, is that a new team going to win? Is it going to be a TOP? Suning, maybe?
That was close, though.
It was close. It was very close. But IG for them, even though it was battling through fevers, and for them, it's not necessarily, they didn't have to necessarily take it too seriously when they brought in Duke, but they're still a world champion team. That is worth something. So for them, it was 100%.
Well, what's your takeaway from this tournament? What was the team that you were most impressed by? What was the team that you feel they're going to need a little bit of help?
All right, so I'm going to go first. The team that caught me off by surprise a
Yes.
lot was actually Rogue Warriors.
Yeah.
I thought this team was done. They lost all of their players. Doingbee's in FAX right now.
Yes.
SMLZ obviously to Suning. But they actually managed to take games off Suning, and they took games off IG as well, which was really surprising. And I think a lot of eyes are going to have to be turned towards their bot lane.
Yeah.
Zhang Wuji, which is their new AD carry, he definitely had revenge on his mind when he was going up against SMLZ. They trashed that lane of SMLZ and Sword Art.
Yeah, they're a very good bottom lane. I think their bottom lane's excellent. Their mid lane, they have a lot of mid laners, by the way. They have 3 in their back.
They're switching them over. We don't know who started.
But I think Kong Ming is a great mid laner. Initially, he was once again another LDL talent. This is a completely LDL ridden team. Like the only thing that's been that stood the same has been Killua, their support. Yeah. So I think that they were incredibly surprising. That they're a lot better than I thought they were because I've had them at last place. But 100, that's not going to be the case.
Yes.
In the regular season, they're going to be much better than where I had them as last. For me, the surprise has been TOP because where I've placed them, we've had that discussion where I thought that they were going to be a 6th place team, and I just didn't expect them to like have end game goals. Like I thought it was like, yeah, great, early game leads, but where is that going? No, they've still resolved that for me to a most part, and they're still a team that's growing too. So I think TOP is much better than what I thought they were going to be.
I think that does it for the LPL season.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the game, the actual game that we're going to be playing on. So biggest change to me, I feel like was a turret plating because this really controls the pace of the game, the objectives. You know, should I stay to get this 160 gold or should I back? Obviously, I stay, but I get ganked after. Yeah. But I'm not a pro, so what do you guys think? How would this change the landscape of the game?
I actually think turret plating is one part of it, but the other big part is the teleport changes where you can't cancel anymore. Mm-hmm. So what we're seeing right now is that there basically are no defensive teleports. Because if you do a defensive teleport, the team backs off. You have to go, you actually have to land where you teleported, and you lose all of that turret plating gold in the lane you left. So there are no defensive teleports, and what we've seen as the result of that is all the teams have to always have this on their mind is that they have to overload one side. And what we saw in the finals between IG and TOP is game 1, game 2, they actually traded turrets until the second turret. Because you can't go back and defend something. People just back off and you just waste a teleport, you're in the wrong position, you get nothing for it, and the enemy team takes the turret plate. So you have to trade all the way. And that has really shaken the way the early game kind of matches up. So
that's
very
a good
different
one. That's a good one. I think that like the teleport changes the game drastically.
Yeah.
Another one that changes the game drastically is just how much gold you get early on in the game. Like post 14 minutes, there's just so much gold that's been injected. I remember, like for me, my biggest question is like how similar is it to like season 2? Season 2 that was so much dictated by the gold that Dragon was giving him. So like for a lot of it, it was like, okay, you better pick level 6 composition and then run around to the river and then pitch your tent and just look for that fight around that mark, because if you can snowball dragons, like a lot of the time, that's where the gold is. They increase the dragon gold, they increase the turret gold significantly, and then you have the bounty goals that's come about it. So like right now there's so much early gold that you can get that people are picking simply for lanes a lot of the time. To your point about teleports, we're seeing a hell of a lot more carry top laners now because you're offensively minded. You're thinking about pushing the top lane, the top side of the map, because if there's ever a defensive teleport, you instantly win that matchup. There are times where it's like, I'm just like, snippet of my solo queue is like, hey, you know what, Vayne sits at top lane. Depends on whatever that she has Klepto, but she can come out with Guinsoo's pretty easily if she can get those turret platings down. So like a lot of the questions about how much gold is out and about really dictates how many carry options that there are and how many people are like really just carrying while the laning phase. So I think while Summer Split in Worlds was about laning phase to begin with, now it's kind of like that, but like OD. It's a lot more that's really focused around them.
It's super interesting because up until the semifinals, we didn't have a game that went over 30 minutes in the Demacia Cup. That's how early game focused it is. And we've been hearing different opinions. You know, LS from the Kespa Cup, he's saying, oh, people will catch up back on. We'll hop onto the late game train someday. So far in the LPL, it's not happening.
Yeah, I don't ever want to be like knee jerky to all the changes because like you always have to see the first.
Because people are going to go too much in one direction, and there's going to be a comeback.
Exactly, and I think that pick composition. I'm just throwing in an option. Pick composition, perhaps because like gold, like the fact that the gold bounties are this ridiculous. The most incredible part about it is just like CS leads. Like if you have like a CS lead over a matchup, then that just technically goes towards a gold bounty. So there are so many questions around that where pick comps really are something you would tend to value later on in the game, where you can say, okay, who is their largest target? Is their jungler ahead? Possibly, because that's the one that's the most active part of the map, their bottom lane. You may be going for a little bit of that one. So there is a comeback factor that they embedded. It's not effective enough currently. So like right now, you're right. These games are snowballing as it is.
Well, are we going to see more champions that are more lane-oriented? Like, we saw already Caitlyn being picked up a few times, and the turret plating really helps her. Really helps define her pick. So what are some champions you think are going to be really beneficial for these changes? For the current patch, at least. I'm seeing some Cassiopeia still bot lane.
I think that's the big one, because we were talking about the patch changes once turret plating came out, and we were saying about how ranged champions were really going to dominate the scene, because as a ranged champion, you have more chances to actually chip away at towers. And on the flip side, now towers actually last longer in the game. You can actually have more time to grow up and become that carry potential. So once those turret plating patches hit, we saw Victor, we saw Kale, we saw Cassiopeia shoot immediately to the top 3 in terms of like the top lane win rates. And I think Cassiopeia is a massive benefactor of that. Throughout the entirety of the Demacia Cup, red side bans Cassiopeia. She's good in the bot lane, she can be played top, and she can be played mid as well. That's versatility and strength in the meta.
To your point, that's the thing about Victor. Even though Victor was a thing in the last year, this year as well in terms of like worlds, it's that much more just because you can put him in bottom lane, turret plating, more gold that you can get. Klepto's pretty good too right now. So there are a lot of questions around that. So 100%, I just agree with that. I just think that right now, the only change that I would be looking for in the meta would actually be that turrets stand a little bit longer. I know that was something that they tried to do a little bit more. They kept the resistances post 14 minutes because the turrets were actually just paper at that point.
Yeah, I should fix my comment, but basically pre 14 minutes, the turrets stand a little bit longer. After that, they're paper. They're just gone.
They're just gone. So like I think that one way to actually make it so the game lasts a little bit longer is to keep like maybe put a little bit more resistances into the turrets, and also just decrease the gold value sometimes. Like, decrease the gold value just a little bit on the turrets that you get from it, because I think that's right now the fact that you can chip those turrets down, you can just like immediately get gold value back. That's a little bit much.
Especially if you funnel that into the ADC and you get solo gold for the turret plating.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about Nico. She actually hasn't seen any play in the Demacia Cup. Global ban due to some bugs. Knight said that he would have played her if she was opened. How do you think Nico would have fit into this whole meta right now?
I'm just going to say Nico as a champion design, she's either going to be super strong or kind of underpowered, because she relies a lot on that surprise factor. And that surprise factor is kind of limited in terms of professional play and team environment settings where everyone's aware of the possible tricks you're playing. And her team fight output is it's not a very stable output. Either she gets massive output or not much at all.
Yeah.
You're not fooling anyone with your passive in terms of 5v5 team fight setting. That's kind of her problem that she stands in. So the reason she's really good right now is because her ratios are absolutely insane. And if she gets that off, the team fight's just basically over. And I think that's what's keeping her here.
And her most consistent thing, like a lot of mid laners would value for her, is her push and roam.
Yeah.
So like she has the ability to just clear mid because she throws out Q, gets like 3 blooms off of it, and then she can leave the lane. I think that's like the biggest thing that she has that's really working for her. So on that front, I think that's something that if they ever nerf her numbers, then she's just useless. Right now, I think that she's in an okay place of like, there are great matchups currently against her, and I think that the usual Galio that we're seeing that's first pickable is actually pretty damn good in her lane and then in team fights where she can't really deal with that. So I wouldn't nerf her too heavily is my thing. I think that while her numbers are kind of crazy and that there should be a toning back in how quickly she can just push and roam, I think that right now she's not destructive in competitive play, but in solo queue maybe. Solo queues she's destructive. In competitive League of Legends, I think there's ways around her.
I think currently she's way too strong in the mid lane and in the bot lane as a pseudo AD carry.
Yeah.
And I think what this is my prediction, but I basically think what the balancing team will do is they'll try to refocus her into the jungle role, but she can play around more with her passive and stuff like that.
Yeah, so hopefully, I mean, the patch is going to come, I believe, in 2 weeks from now. So we'll see what changes there will be for Nico and whether or not she'll be seen on the stage at that time. Let's go back a little bit. I want to talk about, even though you guys already mentioned it, top 3 teams, LPL Spring.
We can even put some depth into this one. So, like you said, top 3. That's as much depth that we can go into. So, I can start on this one because you started the last one.
Yeah.
So, I think for the most part, we're going with the same idea of IG and RNG. I'm going to say why I think IG stays number 1 because domestically, RNG was first place in both splits. So, like, that's something that we should be thinking about pretty consistently because we have now IG saying, no, we're saying IG is going to stay on top of the game. So, in Spring Split, I said IG would be RNG 2018. I was wrong about that. In Summer Split, I think I said the same thing. Can't remember all that. The fact that I remember Spring is actually hilarious. But my idea was that IG should be better because they brought in the Shy, and the Shy should be there consistently. While they didn't necessarily have that this last time around. So I think just coming back to the same idea, IG has the Shy. They have these players. They have star talent in what is a meta that favors lanes, solo lanes in particular. And Jackie Love, even if we're talking about, duo lane 2v2, I still think that Jackie Love and Baolan have learned so much in last split. Because, Spring Split, okay, there was a lot of nerves there. They were losing in big name matchups. But then the Summer Split, that actually wasn't happening as much. They were actually remaining even in nullifying the lanes. So the fact that that happened means so much. The only thing we were challenging them at was team fights, and they got better at that as well. So, IG should be number 1 just based off that. They grew when they were already a very strong identity in the early game.
Just to your point really quickly, I think Jackie Love, people really underestimate this guy. He's 17 years old. Well, he's 18 now.
Yeah.
He's a world champion. He says, he's very humble. He says he's not talented at all. He just works hard. But this guy is insane. Flashing in with...
I guess it depends who you're talking to about humble, right?
Yeah. I actually think Jackie Love is super humble. I'm always the one that is the grade tier A kind of bullshit.
I think he's just going to get better. So to your point, I also agree that IG is going to continue to stay on the top.
He's the number 1 reason I think they are going to be the top team in the LPL. Jackie Love through Demacia Cup has been absolutely amazing. Because he's got highlight plays where he goes in, picks up 4 kills and stuff like that. There's no nerve issues anymore. I think he has that world champion in the back of his mind to back up his ego. So... I just think they just filled up all their holes that we used to have questions about. Team fighting, Jackie Love, they're all gone. 2
birds with one stone. We just both said that they were number 1, so that hits it. RNG, I mean, we don't have to say too much about that. Sure, they made changes, but for me, they're largely the same because of those changes. So for my point, I think they're stronger technically. So by the end of summer, number 2 is actually maybe even underselling them. We'll see. I still have number 2. Number 3, where we go both lying, I'm gonna say Suning. Just because, I don't know if people watch NBA out there, but people you do, this reference, Boston Celtics, where you have just you have the players, you have the talented players from top to bottom. They're not necessarily gelling right now because they didn't have the time to practice with much like TOP. And then during the Spring Split, you may see some issues arise with bottom lane, how Sorta and SMLZ are playing with each other. But I think that is going to be resolved easily going into summer. So for me, top 3 is what they were aiming for to begin with.
Okay, this is where we have the biggest difference, but domestically, I believe the record has always shown this, that domestically, mid lane is probably the most important lane. And I agree with you on the top. I'll give you the top lane for Suni versus TOP. I'll give you the bot lane for that. But in terms of mid jungle, I'm sorry, Maple. I have to give it to Knight and XX.
We have Knight surrounded. He's surrounded by individuals. You just said the top lane's better, the bottom lane's better, the jungle, we can have a discussion about that, but for Suning, better. So what is he going to do if he has everybody just trying to collapse on him?
Look, the top lane difference, I don't even think is that big.
Okay, that's right.
I think 369, first game he plays, he just solo kills Zoom, who was our best top laner last split. So 369 has a lot of room for growth, and I just think domestically, mid jungle is just way too important because mid jungle they're important in every single meta. There isn't a meta where you go mid jungle's not important. Then you're going to ditch these guys. So there's going to be certain times where Maple, at this point in his career, I don't necessarily put him as tier S in terms of LPL mid talent. I'm serious about that.
Look at this
Speaking
LMS.
of traitors,
You look at this guy. Look at
No. I think he still has. He
For all,
still has to prove.
for all
it.
you
He still has
LMS
to prove
fans
that.
out there, he's one of you.
Oh man, 100% Sword Art is far more valuable in the LPL environment.
right.
100%.
Right,
Like
right.
you got a shot caller, you got a top.
I do feel like Suning needs to ramp up a little bit, needs some time to get there. They looked a little bit rough at the Demacia Cup, but it all depends on whether they're able to rough up those edges during spring. So lastly, January 14th, opening match, Top versus IG. TOP, IG. Predictions, gentlemen.
We could potentially get 9 straight games of IG versus TOP from Demacia Cup to opening. That's
This is wonderful,
amazing,
isn't it?
man.
Yeah, this is great. This is great stuff.
We have 14 days pretty much for the teams to practice, and they've been scrimming. We know that from the Demacia Cup. Whether or not they'll continue to scrim, I'm not too sure, but who do you think has the edge in this opening match?
Well, I guess for me, it's the easiest one. You're the TOP level. I'm gonna say immediately. IG is not only gonna be healthy. I'm knocking on wood on that one because we saw what happened in Demacia Cup. They'll be healthy. They'll have the practice. They've undergone the practice. Remember, they were upset. Even though they won the championship, they were upset about their own level of play. So they're going to be grinding at it. The champions are going to come back and they're going to start strong. They've done that before. IG during the regular season, it had that historic run. 18-1 consistently. For them, losing a set is unheard of. I don't think it's going to happen.
All right, so here's my. I'm going to go with IG as well, but I want to put in that TOP throughout Demacia Cup has consistently won the early game against every single team they face. So I think that's where they're going to be strong. But their problem is their late game team fight has not looked the cleanest. You have a couple of guys that basically never had the chance to play team fight at a high caliber. XX, especially on that, I feel like Rookie just faked him out a couple times in team fight. Game 2, they should have won, but XX kind of threw it away with a Rookie on that LeBlanc. Same thing with 369. I don't think they're the best team fight players. So my prediction is TLP, they're going to come out strong. They're going to win the early game, even against Rookie and Ning. But later in the team fights, I feel like IG is just a little bit too much to handle.
Yeah, I'd say 2-0 immediately. 2-0 for IG, and I think they're going to have one early game. But then that's it. The next game is going to be IG early. Invictus Gaming has Invictus Gaming CS differences in terms of their solo laners, 20 above almost consistently. It's insane what they do in the early game. Even with how good of a player as TOP has, I don't think they'll be able to do it come actual regular season time.
I think through Worlds it was like 50 with the Shy, which is like, it's crazy. Okay, you just win the game
And
then.
you just said the keyword.
You just said the keyword right there, the Shy. If they put the Shy in, I think it's just going to be over.
100%. The Shy is the best top laner in the world. That's what it comes down to. So like the fact that even though there are so many great top laners, 369s out there, got Sha'al over here, like the Shy is gonna hopefully starts off the split, and he hopefully can continue on with them. Even though Duke is that good, one of the hopes that I had in the offseason was that Duke would find another team.
Yeah, I do want to see him on there.
Because I just want to see him start. I think Duke should be in a position where he's starting on a team, and if he's right behind the Shy, he doesn't get that chance. So that's my only wish that I would have had in the offseason. It's gone now. But at least that gives him the depth on the bench.
But yeah, for your respects right there. Just want to throw it out there. The Shy, the split he played the most, spring split, his average goal difference at 15 minutes was over 500. Now you put turret plating into the mix with that.
You gave him the turret plating goal!
Yeah.
What have you done, Riot Games?
Insane. That's going to be really insane to watch.
So the consensus, IG and IG. And I'm also for IG too, so it's going to be a very smooth day one for the LPL.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, thank you for letting me pick your brains, letting me learn all of this information about the LPL. So until next time, this is the loading screen.
See ya.